Another year, another season of The Boys has come and gone. Let's talk about Season 3. After a year of calm and with Homelander subdued, Butcher works for the government, supervised by Huey at the behest of Vicky Newman. But both men itch to turn this peace and quiet into blood and bone. So when the boys learn of a secret anti-soup weapon, it sends them crashing against the Seven, starting a war and chasing the original superhero celebrity, Soldier Boy. Now, to my regret, I have not been able to review this season of The Boys from week to week like I have done before, to my regret, because this is the best season yet. The finale drops tomorrow on Prime Video, and though I have seen it, I will not spoil anything about the finale. I will, however, talk freely about the first 7 episodes that are now available on Prime Video. And this season has all the elements that we've come to know and love about this show. But it is elevated by shifting the character dynamics around between the boys, between the Seven, having this elevated sense of tension throughout, and a thematically rich season about moral compromise and the choices we make and how they come back to haunt us. It's a wild ride of a season with no chains or restrictions attached. Whether you're talking about the violence, whether you're talking about the humor, whether you're talking about some of the choices these characters make, nothing and no one is safe. And all these new elements added to a show that I already loved before really shifted my perspective on these first 3 seasons, as season 3 is really paying off everything from the beginning of the show and cements this, honestly, particularly with the finale, as my favorite show currently on TV, where even flaws that I had as I binged the show are justified by the end. Maybe the first half was a little bit slow, but I appreciated that slow burn in retrospect and how it brewed the tension generating with the stories and with the characters. But obviously, if you want to talk about The Boys, you gotta start with superhero satire that is as sharp as it ever was in this season. Right from the beginning, the way the season starts with the dawn of the Seven movie and Stormfront being replaced with Charlize Theron. This show just has its finger on the pulse of pop culture and superhero culture in general. They know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're targeting. And one of the things that I love about the show is that it targets everyone. No one in the show is safe, but no audience is safe either. And you can say that about fandom, and this show targets fandom in such a viscerally funny way. It holds nothing back, but also with its sharp political commentary, how it holds up a mirror to society and its current state. And it attacks both sides. Again, no one is safe. Both sides have shitty people in them, have shitty opinions on them, and this show knows it, and it targets everyone at any chance it gets in a way that enhances the story. The show slowly started to include Vicky Newman in the past season and the political aspirations of who controls this world, with the inclusion of Vought on politics and learning about the backstory, but this season naturally enhances that and converges all these storylines and characters in a way that raises tension and stakes from the beginning. Whether you want to talk about Vicky Newman, her relationship to Stan Edgar, how she screws him over at the chance of getting on the good side of Homelander, how she is obviously using him as Stan Edgar did before, using him as a product in this incredible scene where Stan Edgar shows no fear in regards to Homelander. And Vicky Newman, she's not quite on that level, but she's a very smart person who is still holding that secret back about being a soup. Despite Starlight and Huey and the boys knowing it, she's still playing her cards very close to her chest. And by the finale, some really interesting things happen that completely shift the status quo of the series going forward. Speaking of shifting the status quo, Homelander in this season. Anthony Starr is on another level entirely throughout this entire season. This is the best performance he has given as this character that has this frightening ability of being very scary, of being sinister throughout, where you just don't know when this character is about to break. And throughout the season, you have several different interactions where you're just bending the stick and you're just waiting for it to break. But throughout it as well, Anthony Starr plays it in a way that makes him feel sympathetic. You feel pity for Homelander as you start seeing the cracks that he is not immortal. And that's what makes it so interesting. That's what makes him so compelling and complex as a character, which makes the performance in itself all the more impressive. Furthermore, through Homelander, through the characters, you see this season more as a payoff to the first 3 seasons and not just this isolated one. You feel this sense of escalation as one season has been built upon the previous one. And the way this show paid off just last week with the reveal that Soldier Boy is Homelander's father. The thing that has haunted Homelander throughout the first 3 seasons, and now we have a payoff. That not only gives him happiness, but now takes any restraints off of him. Now that he has a father, now that he has a chance at being happy, as he has always thought a father-son relationship, whether that would be with a father for himself or being a father for Ryan, that's what makes Homelander extremely frightening in this season. And you can see throughout the first 7 episodes and in the 8th one as well that he's trying to take the chains off of himself. He's trying to move the chess pieces on the board because he's had enough. You have that great speech early on in the season where he just tells America that he's better than everyone. He knows it. It's time everyone knows it as well. And you have a certain number of people that side with him, that admit that he's better, that want him to lead them no matter what. One of my favorite scenes in regards to that dynamic character shift is the ending of the first episode where he meets Butcher, and it is the immovable object meeting an unstoppable force. With these two that just want to get rid of one another, regardless of who gets hurt, regardless of collateral damage. And it's what positions Butcher in this place where he's saying goodbye to his morality. He's saying goodbye to anything that has held him back throughout these first 2 seasons regarding friends and being a good guy. That's the message of the season with the attitude that Butcher takes. There are no good guys. The Boys has always been very good at blurring these lines of morality and making it morally gray, like the Boys are not really good people, but they're better than the 7. This season really blurs that line. You see Butcher going down this path of darkness where he's becoming the thing he has swore to destroy, as he is tempted by the temp compound V that Maeve gives to him. He takes it with no restrictions, anything to get what he wants in this search to destroy Homelander and to find Soldier Boy. And he brings Huey down this path of darkness with him, and you start to see this rift between the boys. Butcher and Huey to one side, Kimiko and Frenchie and Mother's Milk to the other, and even Starlight, who represents the damage to the relationship between her and Huey, where she has always been the one that saves him because she's the soup, and now he needs that reassurance. He needs that emotional embrace of, I can protect myself and I can protect you too. And I just think that relationship is so dynamic in this, where I was very disappointed that Huey just felt like he was there throughout most of season 2. In here, he has a very proactive role, a very interesting dynamic with Butcher and with Starlight, and that relationship plays a pivotal role in how things play out. This relationship and the friction that the story naturally adds to it makes both sides of Huey and Starlight compelling because you understand both sides. Whether you want to talk about Huey, who finds out his boss was the head popper all along last season, now he doesn't know whether he's going to live through the next day when he goes to work. So naturally, he wants a way to protect himself, Plus, he sees his girlfriend being used by Vought, by Homelander. She now has to pretend to be his girlfriend on TV, and he's psychologically abusing and torturing her, whether through the locking up and disappearance of Maeve, who was ready to help her, killing her former friend, her childhood friend. He's on this road to unshackling himself from anything and everyone. And I love this road that Starlight goes on, where she wants to save Huey from Butcher, who she's never liked, and now she sees him as the villain, and Homelander doesn't even seem like a big threat to her, where she catches him with her cell phone doing this kind of Instagram live and all that. And then Vought uses it against her. I love the way Vought's and Amazon's social media is using real-world social media to comment on stuff from the show. That's just incredibly well done marketing, blurring the lines of reality and engaging us into this world as fans. And speaking of relationships, Kimiko and Frenchie are such a joyous couple. They're too pure for this world, where everything around them is crumbling down. Butcher going down this path of darkness, Huey following him, Mother's Milk, who's trying to live through this trauma now that Soldier Boy is back and one of his friends set him loose, the guy that killed his family, and he's willy-nilly going after Soldier Boy, not caring that he will die if he steps too close and too far onto Soldier Boy's way. But Kimiko and Frenchie, they add this joy to the show. They add this pure dynamic where even when they're apart, you start to see how they themselves crumble down, where Kimiko is so alone, particularly when she is without her powers and she has to decide whether she wants to keep those powers that supposedly make her a monster the way she sees it, or she wants to be with Frenchie. And Frenchie is in this storyline that I don't think pays off too well. It just feels like an excuse to keep him apart from the boys and from Kimiko. But in the entire spectrum of the season, that's really my nitpick. Frenchie's storyline with Nina, because whenever he's with Kimiko, I adore seeing these two together. I want to protect them at all costs. I even love the musical moment that they have where you just see how damaged Kimiko is, that she has to create this coping mechanism that is very similar to another character that we're going to talk about very soon. It's just wonderful, the relationship and dynamic that these two have and what they add to the group. And I love seeing Butcher getting these powers, getting physically stronger. He can handle soups by himself. He is successful on this mission that he kind of has tunnel vision for in finding Soldier Boy, the weapon that can kill Homelander, and yet his life around him starts crumbling apart. Whether you're talking about his relationship with the boys, whether you're talking about his relationship with Ryan, that will get a great payoff tomorrow in the finale, and that's all I'll say. And he just leaves him with Mallory. He goes down this path where he's abandoning everything he stood for. That's compelling because it's a difficult choice, and it's a choice that we understand how much is damaging who he was and those around him. And while we see Billy Butcher going down this dark path where he's destroying everything that he stood for, everything that he is, and everyone around him, most importantly, the show still finds compelling ways of peeling back the layers on Billy Butcher. We see the trauma that he lives with every day, with his brother having killed himself because Billy Butcher left his brother alone with their abusive father. And how do you tell yourself every day? How does Butcher tell himself every day, it's not my fault? He left his little brother. Is he going to leave Huey now? Is he going to lead Huey down this same dark path that is going to end in the same way? When Annie tells him the Temp V is killing you, is he not going to tell Huey? Does Huey represent that line that Billy Butcher doesn't cross? Is Huey the thing, the person that keeps Billy Butcher human? It's a beautiful contrast to the journey Homelander is going on. While Homelander is getting rid of all the limits and restrictions that we know he has, the show is exploring what are the limits for Billy Butcher. And that is so compelling. And it just makes these two, this dynamic of Homelander and Butcher, all the more interesting because it starts to take away the supposed limitations that we thought they had. And so you just never know what's going to happen next, making for a very unpredictable season in the way that it plays out. On the other side of that coin, the Seven also have a big rift among them. It just feels like none of them are getting along. The Deep has got this subservient attitude towards Homelander, like he'll do anything Homelander wants. He'll eat Timothy the octopus, and he's trying to get his sex life back on track with his wife, but he has these sexual urges towards fishes. A-Train has a great arc throughout this where there's this guy, the Blue Falcon, targeting black neighborhoods, and he starts to veer on that morality line. Like, the choices that he makes throughout the season are the complete reverse of Butcher. And again, you have this payoff of the journey that he is going on in this third season, but also in this journey that he has been on since season 1, episode 1, where he starts to come back into the light a little bit, where no one trusts him. The Deep wants to take his place. Homelander constantly mocks him. Starlight dislikes him. No one at Vought, not even Ashley, likes or trusts him or lets him do anything that he wants to do. And Black Noir, this show does a remarkable job in making you feel for this character, where we have a quick flashback where we finally see his face, that conversation with Stan Edgar right before Soldier Boy gets taken away in the past. And yet, for the most part, this character never speaks. This character never takes off his mask. And yet, with no dialogue, with no visual emotion, we can still feel so much pity for him when he starts seeing all these cartoons this past week, and you realize how much of hiding behind his mask has been a coping mechanism, because he hasn't been able to fully process the trauma of being beaten to a bloody pulp by Soldier Boy, being abused throughout his life by those he thought closest to him. And I think the show does a really good job without telling us, but showing us that his brain was really damaged when Soldier Boy beat him up. The point that he can process things, he cannot talk to people, so he imagines these cute cartoons as his friends. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. And the show does pay that off in the finale in a heartbreaking manner, but in a unique manner. I think they elevated Black Noir immensely in this show, as in the comics, he's just a botched Homelander clone. That's not very interesting, but this show in general has elevated the story from the comics, and it has been one of those adaptations that is better than the source material for sure. But I've mentioned him here and there. Let's actually discuss Soldier Boy, Homelander's father, Jensen Ackles, who is brilliant in this role. Such a great addition that completely shifts the level of threats and the number of threats throughout this season, where you just don't know where this guy is gonna go. And I appreciated how the show had this first half that was kind of a slow burn to find Soldier Boy, and then once he's out, once he's kind of this wild card element to the show just picks up the pace in a kinetic manner. And Soldier Boy is absolutely riotous. He is so entertaining. He is a scumbag. He is absolutely a disgusting human being with no remorse. There's barely anything redeemable about him, maybe apart from his sense of humor that is not for the faint of heart. Like I said, this show holds nothing back. At one point he mentions that Bill Cosby makes one hell of a drink, and I couldn't believe that they did that. But all the jokes, all his comments with archaic notions of society, of political issues, you're bringing this guy from the 1940s that is so archaic in his thought process, and you bring him into a world where cell phones exist, social media, Pride Month, and everyone is free to love whoever they want. Obviously, this guy is not going to appreciate it, but they make it so entertaining in a way that's very different from Homelander, where when it comes to this guy, it's not a matter of when he's going to snap. It's just a matter of, are you going to cross his line? Because from the beginning, he's willing to kill anyone who gets in the way of his mission to kill all his former partners, and slowly we learn who was on that team, with Black Noir included, who just seems to dodge everyone throughout the season, and brings us into Herogasm, one of my favorite episodes of this series. Hell, episode 6, 7, and the finale that comes out tomorrow in this season are my all-time favorite episodes of The Boys. But I love how the show uses Herogasm as a setting, and yet as one of the most emotive and intimate episodes of the show, where we explore the limits of Soldier Boy, the limits of Butcher and Huey that sends them on this collision course against their own team, but also explore the compelling trauma of Mother's Milk and what happened with his family, where his storyline throughout the season with the stepfather of his daughter is so compelling, and you just want to beat the shit out of that guy. But then you have him coming after Soldier Boy, where you just know that this guy could die. Mother's Milk stands no chance against Soldier Boy. And the show in episode 6 has all these hilarious moments. Mother's Milk opens the door and just is inundated with cum on his face. And yet the focus is on that fight. The tension that is escalating throughout that, as we know Soldier Boy and Homelander are gonna collide. But then you have Butcher and you have Huey, all with their powers that come this close to killing Homelander. That's how you elevate stakes. That's how you create genuine tension that feels like it was natural built up, and you have that payoff and you raise the stakes for what we saw in episode 7 and what we're all gonna see tomorrow in episode 8, in one of the most action-packed episodes of the series, because this season delivers the best action of the entire show throughout. But particularly in the finale, it's an action-packed episode. It's a big brawl in Vought Tower, including so many people, where you just don't know who's gonna side with who, what are the allegiances going to be, and it's extremely fun. The action throughout the season has been at its most violent and most gruesome, and as much as I've loved this show since season 1, one of my biggest issues has always been how the action is shot. It's always very close-ups, and cut, too fast, a little bit like Taken 3 in that regard. This season has done a much better job at letting us see the action. It doesn't need the most exciting choreography, we just need these characters to be brawlers and use their powers, and we get that in this finale. There are some really good moments with Maeve and Homelander. There are some great moments with Soldier Boy fighting off against another soup that I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's a big brawl for the bulk of the episode, and it's awesome. And not just awesome because of the violence, because of the choreography, that helps obviously, but it's the drama, the character dynamics that we have been building throughout this season, and the unpredictability of what each of these characters are going to do. What are their limitations? Who ultimately are they going to side with after certain choices made throughout the season? And in talking about action, which has been at its most violent throughout this, you gotta talk about mature content in general. Just the Herogasm episode alone. Tons of sex, tons of dick, tons of boobs, tons of I would actually love to sit down with the intimacy coordinator of this season, if it was just one for the entire season, but particularly for that Herogasm episode. Whether you want to talk about the weird positions people were in, whether you want to talk about love sausage, whether you want to talk about the deep fucking an octopus, it's hilarious, it's extremely funny, and it's so much the identity of the boys on the surface, where he uses this raunchy, outrageous veneer of debauchery, and yet holds up a mirror to society in every way. About how everyone has flaws, no matter what side of the political spectrum you find yourself in. This show just has layers upon layers to it, and that's why I love it. In regards to the finale itself, which again comes out tomorrow, I won't talk about anything in detail. I talked about how there's this giant action sequence that I adored, but it does a great job in finishing off this storyline, but setting the stage up for the next season. And like I said, this season feels very much like it was paying off the first 3 seasons, and now we're going to this elevated stage for season 4. The first half of season 3 of The Boys felt very much like slow burn, and the finale makes a point about that. How these characters had so much tunnel vision in regards to Butcher. He wants to kill Homelander, so he's going to get Soldier Boy. Homelander wants to be free of the shackles that bind him, so he can just be himself. There was so much tunnel vision on both sides that they forgot to look out for the real, bigger enemy. And the finale does a great job at making the characters and you as an audience member realize and having a oh shit moment as soon as it ends. It leaves things in place to be paid off next, but it feels very much like seasons 1 through 3 of The Boys finished one big chapter of the story, and now we're playing on an entirely different level where the boys themselves feel out of their depth. And on top of that, once again, they find a way to put Homelander in a position where it makes you ask, what can stop him now? The shackles are gone. How? I cannot say, but once you see that final moment that pays off all this political intrigue and the snapping of Homelander, you then go, oh shit. That's what I really loved and makes for the best finale of any of the seasons thus far. Season 3 of The Boys finds its thematic richness in the moral compromise of its characters, blurring the lines between good and evil to deliver its sharpest social and cultural commentary yet, in a season that is equal parts shocking, chaotic, and yet emotive. Jensen Ackles shines as the archaic Soldier Boy, and Anthony Starr delivers his best work as Homelander, adding layers of unhinged complexity to the villain. The dynamic and style of the series still delivers its trademark riotous humor and ultra-violent action, but elevates what came before by drastically shifting the status quo of the show and its characters to frightening new heights. I'm giving season 3 of The Boys an A+. Those are only my thoughts on The Boys season 3, so I won't start the conversation about it in the comments below ahead of tomorrow's finale. Let me know all your thoughts on it, and thank you so much for watching. Big thanks to my channel members for always supporting the channel. So until the next one, love each other and love the movies.